6, good time credit, Chris Fanning.
Oh. I appreciate that. That's okay. No, it is Marvin. Yeah.
Let's see, Martha.
Thank you guys so much.
They're passionate about what they do.
Okay.
No.
I've never been more than that.
Thank you.
Go full screen. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to go full screen. I just never used to see. No, I want the, I wonder if it's different. You may have it in front of you. Okay. That's good. I think it's a scroll. I've never seen that. Oh, it's because it's PDF. I don't see it.
That's fine. Okay.
Are you ready?
You ready? I'm ready.
All right.
Looks good.
All right.
I just have a little intro.
Okay.
We are, as part of the legislative committee that met previously, one of the topics that we had raised was the use of good time and program credit in a probation as well as a incarcerated context. And as some of you have been around for a while know, that has been on the docket for quite a few years. We have made changes over the years as far as program credit. And so the main push here is to look at incentivizing offenders. We know that the positive reinforcements for offenders, the 4-to-1 ratio is a real thing based upon research, and that we wanted to look or discuss some ways to actually be able to look at new or perhaps different ways of looking at good time and program credit. Some of that stems from on the probation side. I went back and looked at the Pew study that had been referenced during the Criminal Justice Reform Commission days. Kansas ranked 50th in the term as far as the length of term as far as probation is concerned. And so by the time you put misdemeanors and felonies together, Kansas was averaging 9 months of supervision, the lowest of all of our folks in the rest of the states. And so while in my opinion, we still should be working for some type of incentives for those probationers, the reality is we are the lowest state of folks doing, up until a few years ago, and I've mentioned this before, Minnesota had 40-year probation terms, which was a huge, they're down to 5 for maximums now, thank goodness, but significant differences as far as probation. On the incarcerated side, I asked Dr. Chris Fanning to join us today. She's the Executive Director of Programs and Risk Reduction at DOC, to talk a little bit more about what does that look like on our prison population, and how can we potentially support DOC in some sort of incentives for offenders. What does it potentially look like, or what are those considerations that we should be considering in terms of longer term individuals? Because there's been an interest in, due to resources, it's problematic. we're serving those folks that are getting ready to get out versus longer term that are doing longer term sentences. And so, Dr. Fanning's graciously agreed, I think you're the 15th PhD today. So,
No comments.
and
Don't hold that against him.
with that, I will turn it over to you, Dr.
Thank
Fanning.
Can I make one comment before Dr. Fanning gets started?
Well, I have Secretary Zamut on here, so. if you
Yeah,
have
sure.
to listen to him.
You'll do the presentation.
He can come on up
You'll
here.
Cover it. So you talked about scientific studies and incentivizing it. My very unscientific study, but very real, is when I'm out walking our facilities and talking to our population. One of the top 5 things they talk to me about, and oftentimes, depending on the facility, it's the number one, is increasing good time or program credit. They are wired into that. They focus in on that. It incentivizes them to want to do better and to do the right things. So anytime, any way that there's an opportunity to increase those incentives, because we don't have a lot of incentives in prisons. We have a lot of repercussions or consequences. We have too few incentives. And that is a big incentive for them. I hear it from them all the time. So anytime there's an opportunity to maybe look at increasing that or providing more opportunities for them to be motivated to do the right thing is good for all of us. It's good for us as we're managing in our prison system, and it's ultimately good public safety as maybe they get on that right track and as they return to the community. So,
Yep.
Dr. Fanning.
Thank you, Secretary Zulidan. So it's 10 after 4 and you've been in here all day. And I know the day started off like pretty heavy with the AI conversation, which is completely intriguing to me. So I'm going to kind of just go through some of this, but I really would like you to interject with questions or anything. And a lot of this may be repeated information, so I apologize if it is, but this is really to think through the good time in the program credit, like Secretary Zaluda said. Go ahead, yes, the slide. So I actually, if you could read my bio, but I started as the Director of Education. So really my first 3 years with the department was really heavy in the education programming that we do. And to speak to that point about the need for programming and the desire, one of my first visits to a GED classroom was in Hutchinson. And I remember this man introduced himself to me and I said, well, how long have you been in the GED program? He goes, well, I just started, but I've been on the waiting list for 5 years. They wouldn't let me in until I was a year from release. So I had to wait 5 years. And that's when we kind of started making some adjustments in education. So I think that we can come to some solutions with any of our programs, truly. But it is really telling when we do have these timelines that really honestly are just part of the culture of a lot of the facilities, and it's not necessarily in policy. So good time and program credit. So good time awarded at a resident's case review every 120 days if they have less than 36 months, annually if they have greater than 36 months. Program credit is awarded upon completion of a credit eligible program. We do have a policy that aligns with that. The limit is no more than 120 days. And education, substance use, career development, family relations, or CBI are the ones that I'd really like to focus on for purposes of this conversation. So I'm not going to discuss education, any of our specialized employment programs, anything like that. But just for the sake of like condensing this conversation, I'm just going to focus on the CBI programs. When we're thinking about CBI, we talk about cognitive behavioral interventions, and that's the theoretical foundation for all of our evidence-based programs. And those include the substance use adult, which is our substance use recovery, career development, or career readiness, it's called a couple different things, improving family relations, and our core CBI. So the core CBI is just your basic, let's go ahead and talk about thinking about what influences our emotions and how do we control those behaviors. This is just a quick snapshot of the past couple fiscal years of those completion rates. So You can see in FY '24, we served 1,198 people in the substance use adult program. And we have a completion rate of 84%, which our target's 85%. So I'm not gonna go through all the numbers. You can read them all. But when we're looking at these numbers, it really looks like we're serving a low number, and we kind of are, which I think you probably know a lot of the reasons, but we'll go over that. So traditionally, a lot of our programs, like I mentioned, are usually a year or 2 years from release. Some of them are a little bit different in all actuality, especially when we're talking about substance use adult. If somebody is struggling with substance use recovery and they're ready to make a change, we should not be looking at how much time they have left to serve, because if they're ready, we need to get them into a program. And our substance use providers have been really great about working with us to get them in programming and need to get in there. The risk reduction program considerations we also have to make is, do they have enough time to complete the program, right? We don't want people finishing half a program and then going and releasing back to the community with some of the core things that they still need to do. We also talk a lot about the risk and where they are with risk. For a lot of programs to be eligible to even get in the program, you have to have higher than a 20 on the LSCMI or higher than a 21 on the WRNA. This is a standard kind of measure for if you should be in that program, and kind of helps weigh against who is going to get a seat in that program. We need to make sure that program matches their case plan, and then always considering their custody level and that their transfer eligibilities are met. The one other thing I want to speak to is sex offender programming. So sex offender programming does fall underneath that umbrella of CDI. However, people do not earn program credit for sex offender programming ever. And if they are required to do sex offender programs, they have to complete the sex offender program before they can earn program credit on any other credit eligible program. Where this can cause an issue is we have about a quarter of our residents that are managed as sex offenders. And with sex offender programming, it's very time sensitive. So you can't have somebody coming in with 5 years to serve and putting them in sex offender programming. That particular program, you do it 2 years or less from release. So we're talking about a quarter of the population that can't earn program credit until they actually finish that sex offender programming and then complete another credit eligible program. I think it's also interesting, we were talking about AI this morning, lots of conversations about our risk assessments. And I think in that conversation, I think, Scott, when you were saying, looking at that predictive analysis, this is where it's important to understand that you can't just plug in the risk number and say, well, you're perfect for this program, this program, this program, because we look at each individual that's on the roster to make sure that we're not inadvertently putting a couple different risk levels in a same program where you put a lower risk guy in a program with a higher risk guy, and we could have a counter effect where you're actually learning some different behaviors that we shouldn't be learning. So when we're thinking about AI, you have to have the knowledge base, right, to understand how it is, even if you're just training that machine. Now the fun stuff, capacity and staffing. So I broke this out into two. So we have our contracted substance use staff, and we partner with RADAG and SAC. They provide our substance use programming. They, on average, can complete about 45 a year if we're looking at that 85% completion rate. Our KDOC staff do all the CDI programs, and they're averaging about 64 completions per year. And I did put the salaries up there because I kind of want you to understand what they're doing and what they're facilitating is high-level programming. It takes a lot of training. Usually takes about a year for us to train a program facilitator to be able to independently facilitate a program. And once they get into it, a lot of times this is a stepping stone into maybe another position in the KDOC, which we like for people to continue with the KDOC and advance, but it really causes a lot of issues with our retention and turnover in being able to provide all of the programs. We do have a ratio limit for fidelity purposes of 8-to-1 participant per facilitator. So we can usually run 2 facilitators at a time with up to 16 people. With substance use adult in particular, that one is 47 sessions over 16 weeks. If you go 3 times a week, and other CBI programs are 24 to 52 sessions or 8 to 17 weeks. Let me talk really briefly about this facility dedicated classroom space, and then I'm going to get into some potential solutions, and I'd like to open it up to all of you. The facility dedicated classroom space, this means that at Lansing, I have one classroom, I'm speaking hypothetically, one classroom that is dedicated only to substance use programming. And I have one other classroom that is dedicated only to sex offender programming. That's a dedicated classroom. We have additional classroom space. We have more than 26 classrooms across the state. However, it's shared space. And it's shared space with CBI programs. It's shared space with reaching out from within, Brothers in Blue, with all of our education programming. I mean, we have 11 college partners across the state. So we have a lot of programming happening and really limited capacity and space. So this is the last slide, and then I haven't seen anybody yawn yet. So this is good so far. I don't think the secretary is going to fire me today. So we're looking at solutions. The easy solution right in front of us is we need more staff, and then we need more classroom space. Right, talking about mobile or modular units, reallocating unused space, and then expanding that tablet-based delivery for physical space is limited. And I will speak to this in terms of our education programming. We've actually have all of our students who are in adult education programming. So they're doing some academic enrichment, they're working on their GED, they're maybe doing some prep for college. They all have a tablet that is dedicated to education and specific for education. We're able to do fully online kind of work that they're doing independently. We do hybrid classes, and then there's the face-to-face classes. So we have figured out ways in education to kind of expand our reach. So I do know that it's possible. The limitation I think we get into is with fidelity to the program and having the facilitators trained appropriately to deliver it in a hybrid type model. Also, I want to talk to the peer mentor model. We've been discussing this a lot. We have a lot of peer mentors that were substance use, a lot of peer tutors in education. And what I really like about this model and what I would really like for the commission to consider is ways to expand that, because if you have longer term residents sitting in a facility for 10 years, maybe they're bringing some really strong assets to the table. Maybe they do teach. Maybe that's a skill that they have. Maybe they can co-facilitate a program with somebody, but giving them a purpose and something to do in those 10 years keeps all of us a lot safer. So when we think about how to expand that programming, thinking about what how that peer mentor model might fit into everything. That was like 12 minutes. So I want to open it up to any discussion or questions that anybody might have. Everybody's done. I'll email you my questions.
So do you, I mean, it's obvious, I'm from probation, right? The more programming you have, the better the person.
Right.
You have data that can show if somebody's completed CBI, that they recidivate 20% of the time versus those that don't as they do.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it, because obviously it costs money to have someone housed. If
Yeah.
we can prove that it's beneficial to do programming, it's beneficial to add money in the long term.
Yeah. So I don't have that data offhand, but that's a really great question. Definitely something I can get to.
Please remember I asked a great question.
It's been recorded.
Yeah.
It's being recorded.
If you have some data, we might be able to compare it to ours for
Yeah.
conviction. So we might be able to work to get the data you're talking about.
Yeah, so maybe you and I can connect. at some
Yep.
point, Yeah. I was debating, all right. Is program access limited for people who have shorter amounts of time left to serve? Like the question comes up often of how does the interplay of good time and program credit come into play? If you're awarding the good time credit, you might not be eligible for the program credit, but if you wanted to do a program, how does that get managed if there's? Well, so let me speak first too. There is a limit. So if you have less than 6 months to serve, you won't be able to get into any program credit eligible, right? As far as the interplay between good time and program credit, I don't know if you can address that. Maybe a little bit better than me. That's like a custody and classification type of question. What comes up a lot is like, well, if it's 6 months, but then I have good time that'll be slightly less
Yeah.
than 6 months, does that make
Yeah.
somebody not eligible? And if they have a very limited amount of time, what kind of programming can they actually access? Like if they're in RDU or other places, is it more limited what they can access?
Yeah, if they're in the receiving and diagnostic unit RDU as they come in, they're not gonna really receive anything while they're in there. They're being assessed, they're being processed, and we're gonna kind of gain a sense of where to place them. And if they have less than a year, certainly 9 months to go, they're not gonna get into a lot of programming, particularly if they would be eligible for some program credit on the end of it. They have to be able to complete programs like our batterers intervention folks said, if somebody's can't commit to 6 months, it's a 6 months program, then there's no point. Too often for us, it's triage. It's who's getting out, who's at the right custody level. We can get them programming before they can get out. We don't want people, we want as few people releasing as possible without programs. But we release a lot of people that don't get the programs that they need. I think we're releasing in excess of 4,000, it's about 4,500 people annually. And if you look on Dr. Fanning's slides, not a lot of people are getting into some of those programs. Now they're doing other things that they can get program credit for, the work and whatnot. But the cognitive programs, the substance abuse programs, there's not enough staff. There's not enough space. And then even if we had enough space and we had the funding, I think it's difficult to recruit those people and hire them. It's hard to, especially substance abuse, it is hard to find those people. I think we hear that from community corrections as well. There's just a limited number. It's a real challenge, but I think it's worth the investment. I think there's a bang for the buck there.
Seems like the salaries might not help recruiting.
Well, no.
I couldn't help but notice.
And again, what I hear from my not scientific survey, what I hear from our population is, let's say a person that has had substance use issues and they've got 20 years to do. They come into the system, they want to get some programming right now. They don't want to be using and drugs make their way into our prisons, just like they're in society. And men will stop me all the time, say, could you get me the programming now so I can avoid using? I don't want to use. Well, and I'd love to do that. The issue is if we put that person in the program, somebody who's getting out in a year won't get it. And so you're picking and choosing too often.
One thing I'm wondering, based on your talk about the peer mentor model, is like, we've talked about with longer term sentences, there's less appeal to maybe push for program credit for longer term sentences. But what about a program credit specific for mentoring for those folks that are in on a longer term, with the idea that helps safety, it helps costs, it helps a number of things, but we're not just giving them time off for these long sentences.
I agree. Peer mentors are effective. I can speak to a group all day and I'm very positive about get into programming, do this, get on the right track. And the peer mentor talking to them for 5 minutes, who's has a lived, shared experience, much more influential than me. And some states are certifying peer mentors. That's what I think we need to be doing. and start to utilize them more. I mean, it's a resource that we can tap into with modest cost and some real benefit.
I'd also like, oh, I'm sorry. I'd also like to add though, think about a peer mentor. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a week. Right? A lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah, it also seems like maybe that's a way to make some headway when there's a bit of resistance for program credit for longer sentences, that you can show, if you can show a real benefit to the facility and KDOC costs and other things as well, that might be a way to maybe advocate for program credit for longer sentences.
What does that process look like as far as training, and how long is it?
So right now, it's not a fully formed model. We've been looking at some other state models to look at to use. But for substance use recovery in particular, they do go through a mentor certification through KDADS. It's an online, I think it's a couple hours, but they're continuing to work with the program facilitators as well. But the substance use mentors, we have a few of them around the state. I would love to have more. But they are really impactful, especially in the off hours when a program provider is not there to remind a person, hey, why are you reacting like this to, or why are you thinking about using right now, and helping them kind of use some of those skills that they're learning in programming. With our education tutors, it's different. Some of them come in that, well, we actually have a tutor at DCF who tutors college math and science because she was a teacher, right? So there was a very minimal training on that end. We have a couple welding assistants at KCC at Lansing. And they had to do a little bit of training, but the instructor knew them. And so they've gone through some basic teaching methods and understanding how to do like classroom management things, but they're still co-facilitating at that point. I think that the difference to keep in mind with our education tutors, with our teaching assistants from the colleges, they're being paid by the colleges and they're being paid the same wage as somebody on campus, which is one of the things that I've asked them to do because it's the appropriate thing. So we're doing a couple different things, but I'd really like to strengthen our cognitive programs peer mentors.
And so the certification for those peer mentors, if it was the cognitive programs or substance abuse, whatever, again, we want people leaving with a certification. So if they have a certification that can be utilized out in the community, and if they've got some experience while they're with us, that helps them transition and they could be an asset out in the community. Some of the best deliverer programs are people that have done time, that have those same issues, or have had them.
Jonathan.
You mentioned earlier that some of the ways in which you do these programs are not policy, it's just kind of how we've been doing things. But my specific question is for sex offenders, that has to be done right before they get out, is that right?
Well, it has to be done within 2 years, and that's not so much based on policy, that's based on fidelity to the program, and also understanding there's a different risk when you are doing a sex offender program, like for somebody that has 10 years, and maybe they're gonna learn some things that we don't necessarily want them involved in. So that one is by design, not by policy.
That was kind of vague. Can you tell me, like, what do you mean? There's some things you don't want them to learn, like, because they're in groups where you've got people with different age victims with different, I get it.
Yeah, because sex offender, I think I can clarify this. So sex offender programming is not necessarily just based on risk. It might be because of a different assessment score that they've received. So you can have people who are high risk to low risk in that program at the same time. And so we don't want a low risk person who has 10 years to be in a class with a high risk person who's getting ready to release.
Other question?
I had and maybe Ellie can help with this too. I'm thinking peer mentor pipeline. As a certification that SB 123 offenders that can be peer mentors or they receive peer mentorship, is that a KDAD certification that those folks are doing?
Right
Would they be
now,
eligible?
so there is the training that Secretary Zamuda was referring to is an online training, which is just the first step in becoming certified as a peer if you were out in the community. So if you're out in the community, you do that online component, and then you work under a supervisor for a certain period of time, and then you kind of complete their training, and then you're fully certified. So the limitation for folks in the facility is that they can't kind of complete that part two. They can do the online, but they can't complete that. And part of becoming fully certified is completing any legal obligations that you have. So right now, the way KDADS has peer mentoring certification laid out, if a person is still on parole in the facility, on probation, they are not eligible to become a fully certified peer mentor because they're still fulfilling their legal obligations. I have been working with KDADS, a lot of people have been working with KDADS to look at implementing a forensic peer mentor certification and possibly removing that requirement for folks so that they could become fully certified in the facility and walk out the door with a certificate, or they could release, then complete part two, and then start working as a peer mentor in the facility. So I think there's a lot of will kind of within KDADS and the community as a whole to kind of make that happen. But as of right now, that's how it's stands.
So that would provide a vocational opportunity then once they're released.
Yes.
And fill a need, I think, that's out there in the community.
Right.
I don't think there's enough.
We pay, that's a modality we pay for.
Yep,
So
yep.
It's a really good idea. Any other discussion? Doctor, thank you. It's like a big bang here, doctor. Closing remarks, and this would be the time that we would normally have like 14 or 15 different bills. This is a little bit odd this time around, and some of that is because that Criminal Justice Reform Committee's kind of taken some of that. And I told Scott, we had a conversation today, I said, I'm really not worried about that because of all the programs and all the outreach and the DOMO that you folks have completed here at Kansas Sentencing Commission. Very impressive. So I'm not at all bothered that we don't have a lot of bills to discuss, but Scott, remarks in regards to the agency?
well, I think we've covered the gambit from AI to matters intervention to comprehensive redo of the guidelines to drug policy. So we got the ABCDs of everything today. I am interested in and I think hopefully the youth is interested in some of these topics in terms of deciding what direction we want to go with that. Obviously, as is most of the situations with these bills, there's usually a price tag associated with them, either in the form of money or time or other people's resources to be able to handle them. But I think that the main issue here is to try and distill something down. Keep in mind, just for reference, we still have the Senate Bill 123 plus bill still in committee. So from a legislative status, that's right for hopefully finishing up. As you recall, it was unanimous on the House and the Senate side. The only difference was the changing of the effective date from statute to register. So I'll be visiting with our House members to hopefully be able to concur at some point in time during the session for that, since it received bipartisan support. That leaves us with where do we go forward from here in terms of being able to do as the chair indicated, as far as we obviously have to I have a annual letter that we submit to the governor every year as far as what recommendations we could make. And so that's where we're at this point.
The guidelines are how,
32.
32 years old, and have not had it reviewed. And we can keep on doing like the little Dutch boy and putting the finger in the dike. And when you're talking about the weights of the drugs, that's what you're doing. You're putting your finger in the dike and you're covering it here, and then another one's gonna whack-a-mole pop up over here. I think we're better off because the marketplace is solving that issue right now in regards to prosecutors and defense attorneys having plea agreements in regards to departments and whatnot. They're solving that issue out there now, but we still need to take a look, and we've talked about it many times, but I think we need to start putting the ball rolling to come across the street and ask for you folks for funding to start that review of the guidelines. 32 years is a long time for policy to be in place without having any review. And it's I think, and forget, Mr. Reeds said, good governance is reviewing your policies every so often. I think it's probably high time we do that. I think that's got to be the major focus of this commission. And if it takes 2 years to complete, then if we look at the prognostications by Dr. Gruby, when we're looking at the end of 28, beginning of 29, that's what we're looking at in regards to our duties within 2 years. So that would be my idea to push in that regard. Thoughts?
Second.
I have a question the presentation by Minnesota. They're still working on it? It's now been 3 years?
Well, if I can just briefly, I checked online, there's the book available by Dale Parent, I believe, who was in charge of the original guidelines. And that was what you said 10 years ago, I believe. There's an article online about 10 years after about the assumptions that have changed since that time and the experiences with that. And so this is one of the reasons why they're going through this process, to kind of revisit all of that. And I think one of the things that they discovered was they didn't have consistent long-term funding to really get it right the first time, which is why they're now
10 years ago.
Yeah, which is why they're now back, having to go back and review it because they did what they could with the funds that they had. And I think the important thing is what I heard, maybe you didn't hear this, but what I took away from that was even now, the funding is skimpy. And so they're having to kind of rush this process. So I wouldn't be surprised to read another article in 10 years about how inadequate this follow-up is. So I think our lesson for that is a $400,000 bill for this process, I think is probably a pipe dream. And that we have to ask for something a little more generous than that if we're going to do a really sound and solid study. And I think we're on a really good track, for a number of reasons. But if we could get this right, that would be a really big deal. It could maybe put Kansas ahead of the curve in terms of being a model for other states as well. So this could be a real prestige project, I think, for us.
It's a big job. It's
a big job.
It's a worthy job.
But we have a lot of universities and infrastructure to work with, and that's a plus.
Well,
We're gonna call you doctor.
absolutely. I'm a doctor, but I did miss our last meeting because I was away, but I did want to say I did have the opportunity to go with Scott to the NASC, the national conference. And I don't know if you addressed this at all, Scott, but I will brag on Kansas because I'm just there for the ride and listening and learning people. But our sentencing commission has an incredible amount of data, and we do a lot of really powerful things with it. To piggyback on what you said, and I think that if we do it right, we are going to need to take the right amount of time, and it's going to have to take a lot of money. But we've got such good data. I mean, just other states are like, oh my God, if we just had a fraction of what you guys have. And so we've been doing that portion of it really right for a really long time. So I think looking at it for the future, and we know different best practices, and we can steal people's research from other places, but we can do our own data because I think that's more convincing to the legislators what's Kansas data say about our own people and how we do things here. So I'm hopeful for that. And I'm in for the long haul.
Anything else? We also have the other matters to take up in regards to, and Jessica Dome is not here, so I can talk about it. That information on those children, I'm gonna be like a dog with a bone with that, so I'm very interested to see where that goes. But I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Before we do, I just
Okay.
wanted to thank all of you for, again, taking the time out for all of us to get together is always one of those great times to be able to network with each other and talk a little bit more about higher level type of things. I'm especially grateful for the time it takes to actually plan this thing. And that staff has done a fantastic job in being able, this does not happen overnight. And there is a lot of stuff that comes into this. And staff has done a great job of being able to step up and help, especially Grazie and Brenda, that take care of all of the little tiny details. And so please.
When our next meeting is the 23rd of October, and both Judge Donovan and I are in Judges Conference.
Right.
And no.
And I think we've got,
And
isn't CAXO during that time too, so.
KCBAA.
And KCBAA.
Oh, wow.
So it would appear,
And
it would appear at this point that we will not be meeting in October.
So the next meeting will be November.
Yes.
All right, so no meeting in October. Motion to adjourn. Judge Donovan,
Second.
second Wygan, good discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Everybody, safe trip home. I'm out.
You crushed it.
Yeah, and I think that whether that's EA